Hello, everyone. More than 3 years after the Me Too movement started in the United States, Greece has followed suit. It all started in January with our Olympic sailing champion, Sofia Bekatoru, testifying that she was subject to sexual abuse and harassment. Since then, stories of sexual trauma have spread from sports to the world of entertainment, in what might well be only the start of a reckoning on an issue that was long kept under wraps. Now, it turns out that usually sexual harassment is not the only thing that's happening, and there's a lot of negative dynamics and bad behavior, things that all happen at the same time. So, what's wrong? To answer this and other critical questions, we're honored to have Marianne Cooper here with us today. She's a sociologist at the Stanford University's Women's Leadership Innovation Lab that runs a program that empowers people, men and women, to excel professionally, while she's also involved in doing research and in designing tools to increase the number of women leaders in education, industry, and government, aiming at tackling the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace. And for all this remarkable work of hers, we're going to be talking today. Marianne Cooper, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, let me ask you first, every person has his or her own story, but if we were to find some common elements of the problem, it looks as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is all about power and about choosing or showcasing the right as opposed to the wrong type of leadership. How does this play out, and what can organizations do to make sure these instances are, if not eliminated, then at least significantly discouraged?
Yeah, that's right. At its core, sexual harassment is about the unequal power relations between men and women at work, at school, and then just in society at large. And so in the workplace, that's allowed to occur and is ignored. So inside companies and organizations, what really matters is leadership, because leaders set the tone, they shape the culture, they decide the policies, and they decide whether or not those policies are enforced. So leaders really send the message about what will and won't be tolerated. And then when you look at society at large, that's more of our lawmakers, our politicians, what policies does the country have on the books? And so all of these things, but really at the leadership level, that has a huge influence on all kinds of dynamics related to sexual harassment.
What is the profile of people who are more frequently targeted, and how can they overcome their concerns and come forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in general, when we look at the statistics, about 40% of women experience sexual harassment over the course of their career. And then, so that's, almost 1 in 2 women, and 1 in 7 men experience it as well. So anyone can be a target of sexual harassment. Certain groups are more likely to be targeted. That's what research has uncovered over the last few decades. There's kind of 2 groups, so to speak, that are targeted. One is situations or contexts in which women are violating sort of feminine expectations, either by holding a job in a male-dominated industry, like working in construction, where she's usually one of the only women on a job site, so in male-dominated environments, or where women are sort of behaving in more assertive or forceful ways. Women who hold powerful positions, supervisory roles, it's in those cases, sexual harassment is really a way of putting women back in their place. So that's one context and one group that's often targeted. The other group are the most vulnerable among us, women and of course men as well, who don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of money. Often they'll work in jobs that are with clients or customers who are harassing them. So people who fear coming forward because they worry rightly about retaliation and they don't want to lose their job. So it's really those 2 groups of people that tend to be targeted more often.
I understand you're working at the lab at Stanford to change the structures and bring more women leaders in various fields. Why do you think that will help? One could argue that women can also be violators.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. Women too can engage in sexual harassment. But what the research shows is that sexual harassment is more likely in male-dominated environments. So having more women in positions of leadership tends to tamp down on hyper-masculine environments that can kind of create these sort of dysfunctional cultures. And this is also about making sure that men and women are sharing power. So when you have more women in leadership positions and more women in an organization, that creates greater diversity inside the company, inside the organization, that changes the culture overall. And also when women are in senior positions, women have a voice, more of a voice at the table, so to speak, is often the case in kind of policy decisions on the ground inside companies. So it's certainly not the case that women never participate in these kind of dysfunctional dynamics. But if male-dominated environments are a cause or a driver and predictor of sexual harassment, one way to address that is make organizations much more diverse and have more women in leadership roles.
Now that we all know all of this, what do you think we as a society and individuals can do if we witness instances of sexual harassment in the workplace or at school or anywhere? I mean, there are people watching who might say they haven't been harassed or they haven't harassed anyone. Is that enough to clear ourselves?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, this is about the kind of world we want to live in and what it takes for each of us to achieve that. The issue with sexual harassment and sexual assault is often this is about massive power imbalances. So on the job, it's a leader who harasses someone reporting to them. Now, a colleague who notices something odd or something weird might be able to come forward, but often they're scared to. And that's why people don't speak up, is not because they don't notice something is wrong, though that certainly can happen. But often the case is that they're scared to speak up, and they're right to be scared. What we're dealing with is that a very powerful set of things start to happen when people speak up, and it's retaliation. And about 70% of the time, at least in the US, when people file charges of sexual harassment, they report employer retaliation. So people have to really think through what is the response, what is possible in this moment, who do I speak up to? And this is why it's incumbent upon leaders inside organizations and inside countries to create the context in which people can speak out and not worry about retaliation. There are so many people that have been mistreated, traumatized in many cases, and we shouldn't keep that under wraps. It just keeps going and going at sort of this insidious force. So when you notice something, if you can speak up, do. If you are in positions of influence where you can change the context and change the environment so that people can speak up, do that. And then for the people who do speak up, we really need to support them. So often their reputations are attacked. There's a lot of things that are hurled at them when they speak the truth. And so what they really need is people to be supportive and to be in solidarity with them. So my advice to people is it really depends what you can do in particular moments, how much power you individually have. But I think at the end of the day, we all have something we can do. It can be as small as saying, I saw that happen. I want to validate that happened to you. I saw it. You're not crazy. This is happening. To, filing formal complaints, to coming forward. It's really brave. The people I was reading about what's been happening in Greece. It's really brave of these people to come forward. It's not easy, but it does open the floodgates. And I think that helps. It helps set the stage for other people to come forward and share their story. And I hope that there's justice in the end.
Marianne Cooper, an expert on gender, women's leadership, diversity and inclusion, financial insecurity, and economic inequality. Thank you so much for your insights on this truly critical matter of our times.
Thank you for having me.